Hello and welcome to this week's episode of the Veg Grow Up podcast. My name's Richard and I want to encourage and inspire you to grow more of your own food in whatever space you have available. And I do this by sharing exactly what's been going on in my own kitchen garden, my own allotment here in Littlehampton on the south coast of the United Kingdom. I've been growing my own for over 30 years, but I still learn something new every single day. Now, coming up this week, joining me in the potting shed is Eddie from Traditional Garden Growers. He's got a fascinating product that I want to talk to you about. Before that, we head out in the kitchen garden where, let's just say, the whole process of growing our own food has really started to work. But before that, we head down to the allotment. Well, we start this week off down on the allotment, and I'm down here on Sunday, and I've got to admit, I am feeling a little bit guilty. The reason I feel a little bit guilty is because on Saturday, yesterday, I was out for the day. I took a trip out, not vegetable garden related, believe it or not, and it's just made me feel a little bit guilty. I should have been down here on the allotment. Now, this is prime time at the moment for really getting the allotment in shape for tackling a lot of the jobs that we need to do. But the reality is sometimes we do need a bit of time away. Sometimes we do just need a bit of an opportunity to go and tackle some of our other things that we have going on in our lives. Yesterday was a day at a photography show, one of my other hobbies. Anyway, I've made up for it today. Luckily, we've been down here, and because I have been ahead of myself lately, a lot of the jobs that we have got to do here have been done. Recently, we've been focusing a lot on just warming the soil. So areas where nothing is grown, we've laid down black suppressor membrane, or we have laid down cloches. Now, this has been a pretty good thing to do because we have had a bit of a frost the last couple of days. However, underneath my cloches, the soil temperature was actually really quite good. And because of that, I have been able to sow some early carrots. Now, for me, early carrots are one of those things that we've got to grow every single year. Carrots are a staple. They're not the easiest thing to germinate. It is very much about the soil temperature and the type of seed that we are sowing, which is why I have gone for these early varieties of carrots, just to get started. We're going to be growing lots of carrots this year, and the early varieties just give us that opportunity to get ahead of ourselves. Now, I've been growing my carrots behind my greenhouse this year in some concrete tubes that I've filled up with multi-purpose compost. Now, I know you're probably listening to this and thinking, well, isn't the advice not to grow carrots in fresh compost? You need it at least a year. Well, I would dispute that. The reason being is that I've noticed that what tends to happen is when you dig soil, you get pockets of compost, and that encourages the carrots to fork. I found when you have consistently same soil, i.e. consistent compost, the carrots don't fork. So I've gone with that. I am placing all my carrots inside these concrete pipes filled up with multi-purpose compost, cloches over them to get them started, and we will see how they get on. I've got to say, it actually does feel rather good to actually get some vegetables growing. This is the whole point of what we are doing at the moment, is we are about growing food. After all, carrots are one of those staples, and it's going to follow on with potatoes next week and many, many other plants. It does feel really, really quite good. Now, carrots isn't the only thing that I have also sown. I've sown some parsnips. Now, usually I find it to be a little bit too early for parsnips. Parsnips, I find they really do need quite a warm soil in order to germinate. Normally I find April, May time to be best. But this year I just fancy giving it a go, see what happens, and if we can get some early parsnips, all the better. Parsnips, again, one of those crops that we do eat a lot of during the winter months, so we want to make sure we have those growing as well. Now, wandering around the allotment, I can certainly say that things definitely are springing into life. I'm wandering around and I can see there's plenty of leaf showing up on many of our plants, so gooseberries and things like that. I'm also just looking, I'm going to do this while I'm on the microphone to you. It looks like my neighbours, you know, the ones I've been talking about a lot, it looks like something started being tidied up there. I could be wrong, but it certainly looks like something has started to happen. It'll be great if that is completed. It'll be great if that is tidied up, because that would just make all our lives so much easier. But yeah, definitely we're certainly seeing signs of spring. Nettles are growing, the grass is growing, gooseberries are in leaf, and even the blackberries are starting to show their signs as well. So it's good. We are at the point now where I think it is warm enough for things to happen on the allotment. So we've got no excuse not to move forward. It's going to be a lot of fun. Now, I've also been continuing adding some compost to many of my beds. As you know, last week I was spreading compost from my compost bin. Really good quality compost, I have to say. And we have managed to fill up quite a few of our beds with our own compost. Now, usually this sort of thing would be done over the winter months, but I've recently had this sort of school of thought where I think it's better doing it in the spring where possible. Now, I know Charles Dowden, he tries to get all his bed filled with compost before Christmas, just as a good set-off point, which isn't, nothing wrong with that in the slightest. But I heard Chris Collins sort of say once before, he feels it's best doing it in the springtime because that's when the plants are going to need it. Over winter, the rain could wash out all the nutrients from the soil. Now, I'm no soil scientist. I don't know which is true. All I know is that adding compost to the soil is a good thing. Adding organic matter to the soil builds the nutrition in the soil. So my kind of attitude these days now is that when the beds are empty is when we add the compost. For me, over winter, it's far more important to get green manures growing because they seem to do a much better job for what I want to do. So that's what we have been doing. We've added compost to empty beds, we've had green manures growing, and when the green manures are coming to the end, we chop them down and we let the foliage just rot down on top of the soil and it leaks all those nutrients back into the soil. And then we cover that over with compost. And that is how we build our soil here. Now, this is quite relevant with the conversation I've got coming up towards the end of this podcast this week. But it's certainly all about building soil health and making our soils much, much better. So despite feeling guilty about not being able to get down on the allotment on Saturday, I still feel I have done a lot. Well, it's time now to head on home. In the meantime, let's find out what's been going on in the Supporters Club this week.
Well, I hope you're enjoying the podcast so far. If you are, then yes, I'm going to shamelessly ask if you would be good enough to leave a rate and review. It only takes you a few seconds, but it means well to us. It helps us get found by more people who might also be looking for a bit of inspiration to grow their own food. Added to that, if you are enjoying this podcast, you can also help support this podcast by becoming a member of the Veg Grower Podcast Supporters Club. For just £5 a month, you get access to extra behind-the-scenes podcasts to give you a bit of an idea what's going on here at the Veg Grower Podcast HQ. Also, once a month, you will receive through the letterbox our monthly seed pack, and that seed pack contains a collection of seeds that I have carefully chosen to be sown in that very month. That means they're not hanging around waiting to be sown. Included with the seeds is also a copy of our mini newspaper, which gives you a few instructions on how to sow those seeds. But our newspaper also includes a few tasks that you can do throughout that month as a to-do list, as well as a few seeds you could also sow and a few other features. It's actually a great tool to use to keep your food growing organised. Now, as an example, this week we've sown some basil seeds and we have sown some spring onions. These are both seeds that came in March's seed pack. If that sounds like something you would be interested in, then head to the veggrowerpodcast.co.uk to find out more and sign up. We would love to have you there. Right, back to the gardening.
Well, I'm back home now and in the kitchen garden. Again, we have had a frost here, but at the same time, during the day, it is getting rather warm. It's rather pleasant, I have to say. Now, much like the allotment, I have continued sowing lots of seeds. This includes more carrots and parsnips that I've sown in the beds here at home. Again, these are under Cloches. This is just to give me a bit of a fallback should the allotment not work. Now, one of the key things I always describe when it comes to the comparison between my kitchen garden and the allotment. The kitchen garden here, I try and grow everything that needs a lot of care. I like to think of my allotment as somewhere where they just look after themselves. I don't need to be down there daily looking after the plants. Although I like to get down there every day in the summer, I don't need to be down there every day. And that is, for me, the big difference between the kitchen garden and the allotment. Now, with that in mind, yes, we've sown carrots and parsnips again under Cloches here in the kitchen garden. Not easy, because we're doing this polyculture method here, and that means we just got to try and mix the planting up a little bit and not have an entire bed dedicated to things like carrots or roots. We're mixing it up and seeing how we get on with different things. This is the first year I'm really trying this, but what I'm learning already is that you really do have to think about what you're sowing and where, and when those plants are going to be ready for harvesting. So a bit of thought is going on, but we're getting there. It's not too difficult. It is going to get better and better as well as we go on. One of the other things that I have been sowing is our salad crops. Things like lettuce and spring onions, which we've actually sown those in my veggie pods. Now, I've been growing in veggie pods for a number of years. They sit on my patio area. They are a raised bed with an integrated cover and watering system. I've grown for a number of years. I love these things, and they do me a really good turn, I've got to say. I find them particularly good for growing things like lettuce and salad crops, cut and come again salad crops for that matter, because they just lend themselves perfectly for that sort of growth. Now, as I said, I've sown some spring onions and we've sown some cut and come again salad crops just by scattering a seed over the top, and we'll just let those grow and we harvest them when they are required. This is a great thing about the veggie pod, is it really doesn't take much to look after them, so very happy to say the least. Now, of course, indoors we are still sowing lots more seeds. We've started sowing more and more tomatoes. We're also sowing many other crops. I've started doing some courgettes and pumpkins. A little bit early, I would say, usually, but I'm just doing a bit of an experiment to see if we can get these crops growing and whether starting them off this early has any benefit. As you know, I sow seeds on a pretty much daily basis, and at the moment it is very much all hands to the deck, sowing all these seeds, potting them on, making more room for them to go out into their various locations and getting the most out of the space that we have. We do have a lot of plants, I think it's safe to say. We do have a lot of plants, but we're doing all right with them. We like having our young seedlings. It is that time of year, of course, where many of us will be using window sills and every bit of space that we have available to grow these seedlings on, and that's certainly the case here. Already my shed is full up, so I'm just waiting for my cold frames to warm up as well, enough that I feel we can get our plants into there. Again, I'm using my Growe thermometer loggers to keep an eye on the temperatures and see how they get on. Now, one other thing that I have noticed inside my greenhouse is that things are needing watering in there. I've got in there some plants that have been protected over winter, my peach tree, my grape tree and things like that, my leek seedlings as well. What I've noticed in the heat of the day, it's getting so warm in there that the soil is drying out, so I have to consistently remind myself to go in there and water those plants. Of course, I do have my autopot system inside that greenhouse, which does take care of any plants that will be planted in the autopots, but we're not quite there just yet. But what we do have going on in there is just a gentle reminder that I have to go and water regularly. I think at this time of year it's very easy to forget about things like watering inside a greenhouse because it is so wet and wild outside. But a greenhouse doesn't get rain on the inside, so it is a bit of a reminder to water in there. But also, it does get very warm in there during the day as well. Overall, kitchen garden is moving along again rather nicely. I would like to have a massive tidy up and really get the garden looking amazingly hot. But we're not there yet. We are not there yet. It's, for me, the kitchen garden has to look good as well as be practical, as well as provide us with food. I'm very much about it looking the place that we want it to do. Right, well, with that, I am now going to head on into the podding shed where I am going to have a chat with Eddie. And I met Eddie at a recent event and I think he has got a very interesting outlook. Let's go have a chat and find out what that's all about. In the meantime, let's find out what's going on in the kitchen this week.
Chopping all the veggies, sizzle in the air. Chef Scott with the magic, smells are everywhere. Water starts to boil, onions hit the pan. Recipe of the week, let the feast begin. Cooking with Chef Scott, flavors come alive. Tune in every week for a tasty bite.
Now this week in the kitchen I have made a purple sprouting broccoli and lemon butter orzo. Purple sprouting broccoli is something that we are eating a lot of. It's very in season at this time of year. It's a delicious vegetable in my opinion. We grow it every year and it never fails to disappoint us. It always produces good crops at a time when there is very little fresh crops available. So I think it is well worth growing. Now to make this dish, what I did is I first of all just cooked the orzo, a type of pasta, in a pan of salted water until it was just tender. While the orzo was cooking, I also steamed some freshly harvested purple sprouting broccoli, about 3 or 4 minutes till it was just soft but still bright. Then in another pan we melted some butter with a bit of oil and added in some chopped onion and cooked that until the onion was soft. At which point we added some crushed garlic, cooked for another minute, then we took off the heat and drained the orzo, the right pasta. We then added the pasta into the pan with the butter and the onion and the garlic and just mixed it all around till all that butter and all those onions were mixed in really well with the orzo. We then added some lemon zest and a squeeze of juice and then we seasoned it quite well and then added in the broccoli and, add a bit of herbs and cheese as well at the same time to add some interesting take. Absolutely delicious, I've got to say. Really enjoyed it. Really easy meal to cook. Didn't take long, but was absolutely delicious. Go give it a try. Let me know how you get on. You will, of course, find the recipe on the veggrowpodcast.co.uk. Well, I am very lucky to be joined by Eddie from Traditional Garden Growers, who's got some very interesting products that we're going to be talking about. But first of all, Eddie, welcome to the podcast. Hope you are well. I always like to find out a bit about your background and how you got started. So tell us about yourself.
Okay, so a bit about myself. Country boy through and through. Grew up in a small village in Stanlake, in Oxfordshire, small village called Stanlake. Always had a passion for agriculture. So after leaving school, I went to Harper Adams University, where I studied straight agriculture, but always had a particular interest in soil science, which has sort of led me to the business today. But after leaving university, I went and worked on farms. So I don't know if you've seen Clarkson's farm. Been a bit of a Caleb Cooper, driving tractors and doing all that, working with sheep and cattle, until I found an awesome farm called Farm Ed. I'm not sure if you've heard of it. It's a regenerative farm just down the road from Jeremy Clarkson, actually, in Shipton under Wychwood. That's where I learnt and got a real passion for veg growing. So I worked on their market garden there for a couple of seasons and then brought all that knowledge back to the home farm, which is my grandfather's, and set up a market garden. And since then, I've been growing veg, who we supply mainly to the Oxford universities through the Ox Farm to Fork scheme. which is a great initiative. It links local growers, organic growers, to the university where they feed the students on local veg, reducing the food miles. And yeah, so that's where we got to today, really.
Fantastic. I find that really interesting that you got an interest in soil science as well, because that's not something I hear that often, but it's becoming more and more people are getting interested in the soil and what's going on beneath their feet.
Yeah, for sure. And I think as a grower, in reality, what we're actually growing the soil. We're growing the soil to grow our crops, really. So as I like to put it, we're the custodians of our piece of ground. So we're there, leave it in a better condition that we started it in, really. And as a grower, our livelihoods depend on the soil. If we don't get the soil right, then we're not going to have any produce after that, coming from that. Sorry. So we, as growers, we look at what's coming out of the ground, and so for example, you see a bit of yellowing happening on your kale or something. I think, oh, that's a lack of nitrogen. But the plant is the indicator of what's really going on underground. So if we can get that correct and in the best condition it can be, the symbiosis between plant and soil should happen naturally.
Absolutely. One of the key things I've heard many experienced growers say is it's all about the soil. You can't do anything without good soil, and looking after the soil is number one. And one of the things that is obviously quite relevant at the moment, feeds and fertilizers. We know what's going on halfway across the world has a knock-on effect with the fertilizers coming on into this country.
Well, exactly, and it's the chemical fertilizers as well, which is one thing that has always been hot topic of mine. For example, that's what led us on to start the business Traditional Garden Growers, where we produce our natural fertilizers out of sheep's wool. So the natural fertilizer part of the business came about from what I could see happening within the wool industry in the UK, and what I could see happening with the chemical fertilizers within horticulture and agriculture.
Yeah, I mean, I've heard a lot about the sheep's wool industry in this country as being suffering, like sheep's wool not being worth it to the farmers. But you've came up with a way that we can use sheep's wool in the garden.
So the idea actually came from talking to older farmers who told me stories about shearing time. Often the good wool was sent off to make textiles, sent to British wool, but the poorer quality wool they used to use on the farmhouse veg patch. So we call it the belly wool and the daggings, which are the shorter wool and the bits around the back end of the sheep. They used to put that in bean furrows, turn it into their potato ridges, and also put it on the compost heap. So they knew of how the agronomic benefits that wool could have to the soil. So I thought to myself, well, there must be something in that, with the farmers getting paid very little for their wool, although it's on the rise now. But more importantly, it was the waste that was coming from that, with very little available market for the daggings and the belly wool. So I thought to myself, I can't exactly send or use just a long piece of fleece in the garden. It's not very ergonomic. It's not good to use. Whereas if you pelletize it, then it becomes much easier to use. So I bought a pellet mill and started pelletizing the sheep's wool and using it in the market garden, which seemed to have incredible benefits to the soil. So obviously it's nothing new. Our grandparents knew about it. They were using wool because the chemicals and fertilizers weren't available back then. But in the new form of pelletized wool, it makes it much easier to use, which led me on to the research that we've been running as well. So we've been working with the University of Reading for the past couple of years, actually finding out what it is about the sheep's wool that makes it so beneficial to the soil. Obviously, our grandparents knew intrinsically that there was something good, but now we've got the hard data to show what it does. And we found that in pelletized form, when mixed into the soil, the sheep wool pellets will actually increase, well, it's called Wooltilizer, our our pellets. So what they'll do is they'll increase the water holding capacity of the soil. We found that they increase the microbial activity of the soil. So with that, it's the symbiotic relationship between feeding the soil in order to feed the plant,
Yeah.
instead of feeding the plant straight away with chemical feed, giving a plant available nutrients straight away, instead of having that growing that soil in order to grow your plant. The wool also we also found that it releases nutrients slowly over time. So it's particularly high in nitrogen and potassium. And the reason it's high in potassium is quite interesting. It's this oil called swint, and swint is basically crystallized sheep's sweat. So that's what gives it that high potassium, which is fantastic for your fruiting and flowering vegetables. We use it a lot on our tomatoes and our cucumbers, and to get those fruits running well.
How easy was it for you to pelletize this wool?
Oh, well, it's an absolute nightmare to do anything with, but it took a lot of patience, to say the least. A lot of hours up at the pellet mill swearing at it, but no, it was the wool itself it takes a lot of processing. So we have to shred the wool to start with. We then have to combine the wool with other organic amendments. So digestate is one of our ingredients that goes into Wooltilizer, and then you pass it through the pellet mill, and it comes out almost looking like sheep nuts. Almost, I'm sure if you've seen chicken manure pellets, similar to that, but with a lovely sheepy smell. And when you smell it, you can really tell that that's going to be good for my soil, sort of thing. But the process, is shredding it, mixing it, and then pelletizing it. And the pellets come out of the mill about 100 degrees, so that takes a bit of curing time for them to cool down, and then we can bag them or use them on our farm.
Obviously, you've mentioned Wooltilizer as one of your products, and I guess that's your flagship product. Would that be
That's
fair
our
to say?
flagship. That's the one that I'm most proud of, and the one that we've been doing the most research into.
You've got a few others in your range I've seen as well on your website.
Yes, so we've got power plant pellets, which are the other ones that we use a lot on the market garden. That is crop waste digestate. So do you know about anaerobic digestion?
Yeah.
So it's the waste from that. It's basically where a crop is harvested whole, is then put into a big digester, which uses enzymes to break down the plant material, which releases renewable gas. So that goes back into the grid and sold as renewable energy. But the waste from that is what we use to pelletize, and it's simply just pre-broken down plant material. So absolute rocket fuel when you put it on the soil. We use it a lot on our hungry crops. So our squash patch, potatoes, leeks, they always get a second dressing of that halfway through the season. So we tend to prepare the soil with Wooltilizer earlier on in the season, spring, early application, plant everything out into that, and then the particularly hungry stuff always gets a second dressing of the power plant pellets. So,
and I think there was a couple more products I saw as well.
Yes. Yeah, sorry, there was one called Thatcher's Mulch, which is pelletized organic straw, and we use this a lot in our soft fruit beds. So we'll mulch around the raspberries, especially the strawberries. They seem to love it, and it's super simple. You just simply apply the pellets to the ground, add water, and they expand and form a mulch layer, which protects the soil surface from evaporation. So it helps retain the moisture. It also keeps the fruits clean off the soil, but it also suppresses the weeds as well, which is quite an important. When you're doing it on a larger scale, weeding can be a big task. So having that round really makes a difference.
Yeah,
difference to it.
I used to use something similar. I can't remember what it's called because I haven't been able to get hold of it for a couple of years, but I've been looking for something, and I had great results using that as a mulch in my fruit pots.
Yes, yeah. We use it a lot. Well, my family used it a lot just as a pot dressing.
Yeah.
So it makes it a lot easier, and it adds a nice golden mulch effect on the top of the pot, and again suppresses the weeds. So it's not always having to pull those weeds out and keeping on top of it. So all about making it easier, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, I'm a big, big, big believer in mulching as much as we possibly can, because I actually think mulching is one of the key things that we need to do to be successful veg growers. You know, it suppresses weeds, it reduces the amount of water loss, and just makes our life easier. So again, another mulch to add to the list is great.
Definitely, especially with the dry summer like we had last summer, it's becoming more and more important.
Yeah.
Um, and our final product was compost booster, which is a mixture of the organic straw and the digestate pellets. So it's a way of getting that brown matter into the compost bin. I know a lot of people who have issues with slimy, stodgy, smelly compost simply because it's just grass clippings or there's too much green matter going in. And I know that a lot of gardeners, especially in cities and who can't get hold of as much brown matter as they can, this is a great way to put that brown matter in and create that nice nutrient dense fluffy compost. So the nutrients a lot comes from the digestate, the power plant pellets, and then the brown matter is from that straw.
Brilliant. Well, I think that has given us all a really good insight into everything that you're doing, and it's certainly given me a lot to think about as well. If anybody wants to get in touch or find out about what you do, where can they find you?
So if they go through our website, we've got a contact page there, and I'd love to hear from anyone who's got any questions, because again, I'd love to disseminate all the information that we've been gathering and our little tips and tricks on how we're growing veg naturally with our products.
As always, I have included all of Eddie's links in the blog post for this episode should you require. I want to thank Eddie for taking time out of his day to talk to us. I hope you have enjoyed this podcast. Please do go check him out. Please do go check out the recipes. If you've enjoyed this podcast, then please do leave us a rate and review on your podcast provider. Only takes you a few seconds, but it means the world to us. Added to that, if you also enjoyed this podcast, you want to help support the work that we do, then please consider becoming a member of the Veg Growe Podcast Supporters Club. Just £5 a month, you get access to extra goodies. If you want to get in touch, you can of course visit our website, theveggrowepodcast.co.uk, where you can leave a comment or you can leave us a voicemail, or you can email me, richard@theveggrowepodcast.co.uk. And finally, of course, don't forget you can find me on social media, where I actually had a very lovely message come through from the Netherlands, where Cora says, really love your podcast. Thanks, regards from the Netherlands. Thank you so much for that. Well, that is it for this week. We will be back again next time. So until then, please take care.